An emergency broadcast on television announces the existence of a new virus that appeared at an airport. Infected people become incredibly violent, and soon the airport is in flames. 2 months later, the virus has spread across the world and become a global pandemic that turns people into beings similar to zombies called ferals, seen as furious beasts. The government attempts to establish a quarantine, but many citizens protest and fight for the rights of wild animals, insisting that they are people too. The army has to go into the streets and fight civilians in an attempt to send them home, only to make things worse. One afternoon, all television channels lose signal. Abigail and her brother receive a call from their father, the pilot, who explains that he has a lot of work to help people and promises that they will be safe with their mother. At that moment, they hear a noise coming from upstairs. Then the family runs out of the house. As they are about to get into the car, a feral jumps and attacks the mother, unfortunately killing her. Abigail immediately hides under the car and has to watch as the feral also attacks her brother. When a police siren begins to sound nearby, the feral flees. Shortly afterwards, Abigail hears her brother calling her name, but the mother turns into a feral and ends up killing him. When Abigail cries, the mother hears her and goes after her, but fortunately Cassius arrives and shoots her. He rescues Abigail and she thanks him with a hug. However, her brother also begins to transform, so Cassius makes Abigail close her eyes before he shoots the child as well. 10 years later, the world is in a post-apocalyptic state. Few humans remain, and nature has taken over the cities. In the forest, a teenage Abigail and Cassius are hunting. It becomes clear that Cassius trained Abigail well because she kills a deer with an excellently aimed shot, although Cassius reprimands her for being impatient and not having enough patience. As night falls, the pair stop to camp, and Cassius makes sure all the tripwire traps are in place. A few hours after they fall asleep, one of the tripwires makes a noise and startles Cassius. He leaves the tent to investigate and finds some lint caught on the wire. Then he hears some noises nearby, runs to keep the horses calm, and draws his gun just in time to shoot a feral zombie approaching, likely a scout sent by the horde. Cassius wakes Abigail so she can leave. In the following days, the pair continue traveling, and every time they stop to rest the horse, Cassius continues training Abigail. One afternoon, they stop when they see a car nearby and quickly draw their guns. They see a man knocking down a feral while a second creature approaches from behind. Abigail wants to help him, but shoots too quickly, and her bullet hits both the man and the approaching feral. The creature in the car comes out to feed, and Cassius has to put it down. Afterwards, Abigail searches the car for supplies. Cassius ends the poor man's suffering before taking his shoes. A radio in the car tries to contact the driver, and Abigail wants to warn him about the feral horde in the area, but Cassius tells her to ignore it. At that moment, more cars appear, and a group of survivors surrounds them with weapons. They examine the dead body and see that a human killed him. Thus, they assume the duo did it just to rob him. When the leader threatens to kill them, Cassius and Abigail attack the two closest people and knock them down to steal their guns. The situation becomes tense as both sides point guns at each other until a pregnant woman named Megan steps out of a car to try to calm things down. At that moment, the horses begin to make distressed noises and a feral horde appears around them. Everyone opens fire immediately, killing as many creatures as possible to keep them at bay. There are many, so despite their efforts, the ferals get close, and Cassius and Abigail also have to use their blades in hand-to-hand combat against them. However, the other survivors are only skilled with firearms, and soon the ferals begin to kill them one by one. A woman prepares a Molotov cocktail, but is attacked by a feral, causing her to fall onto a car and trigger a small explosion that knocks Cassius backwards. One of the survivors is bitten, then tries to take himself out, but runs out of bullets and transforms. The leader is grabbed by a particularly large feral and is slowly beaten to death, while Megan's husband, David, is also attacked by a feral. He manages to kick it away. Abigail helps the couple into a car and Cassius kills a few more ferals before joining them. As they leave, there is a feral on the roof of the car, so Cassius brakes hard to knock it off. Abigail takes the chance to grab her belongings before they finally escape. The large feral notices they killed its mate and roars in fury. On the road, Abigail checks the ammunition and realizes most of it was lost. Megan explains they were heading for a riverside colony and that she is 35 weeks along, so the baby is about to be born. However, Abigail and Cassius think searching for colonies is not worth it. They have seen many and none survived. Suddenly the car stops and the group discovers the engine died, leaving them no choice but to continue on foot. Moments later, the group reaches an abandoned town and decides to spend the night there, securing a building to ensure there are no ferals nearby and setting up camp. Megan offers to share her food, but Cassius and Abigail only eat what they hunt to avoid infection. The couple explains they spoke to the colony by radio, so they know the colony has many supplies and medical staff. However, it takes a week to get there, which means the risk is high. In exchange, Abigail says she and Cassius are trying to reach the west coast and escape to the islands by boat. After Cassius sets up tripwires outside, he takes out a map and points the route the couple should follow to reach the colony. But they refuse to accompany them, saying the horde will come back for revenge. Abigail talks to Cassius privately, insisting they must help the couple and that maybe this colony is different. An argument follows, but Cassius still refuses to help. In the middle of the night, the horde finds the broken-down car and heads toward the town. Meanwhile, the men cannot sleep, so Cassius shows David that he always has a spare bullet in his pocket in case he is bitten. David only has one cigarette and a twisted ankle. They talk for a while and end up forming a bond, which persuades Cassius to agree to help them reach the colony. The next morning, Abigail hears a noise and goes downstairs to investigate. Suddenly, a feral attacks her and causes her to drop her gun, but she still manages to kill it quickly with her machete. A second feral begins to chase her up the stairs, and Abigail uses a broken window to hurl the creature out of the building. She almost falls too, but Cassius catches her in time. When the horde reaches the building, the group has already gone. A feral trips over a cable and triggers a small explosion that kills it. Sometime later, Abigail recognizes the area they are in and remembers there is a civilian airport nearby where her father used to fly a small plane. Cassius wants to keep moving and thinks an airport would make it easier for the horde to corner them, not to mention that probably all planes are gone. However, Abigail and the couple vote to go there, so Cassius has no choice but to accompany them. After walking a bit, they find an old building and a car with a man who was recently shot. Cassius orders Abigail to search the building for supplies, and promptly she enters. Abigail only finds some coffee and does not see the family hiding in one of the rooms. Cassius checks the trunk of the car and finds a wheelchair they use to transport Megan. After the group leaves, the horde finds the building and massacres the family completely in seconds. When they finally arrive at the airport, there are no planes nearby. David and Cassius begin to argue about how to proceed, but Abigail interrupts them when she finds her father's hangar. Fortunately, there is a plane inside, and David has the mechanical know-how to fix it. While he works, Cassius and Abigail search the building. Abigail finds a photo of her and her father on the floor and puts it back on the wall. At that moment, the horde arrives, so the group hurriedly boards the plane even though it is not ready. Cassius opens fire to delay the horde, and David manually spins the propeller to help the plane take off. Abigail's flight knowledge is limited, and the plane is slow, so the horde quickly closes in. Fortunately, they soon find the right controls, and the plane begins to gain speed. A feral manages to grab the door, and Cassius has to shoot it to make it fall. Then the plane takes off, and the group manages to escape. However, they fly only a few moments before the plane starts to fail and descend. Abigail tries to land, but the plane collides with a cluster of trees and crashes to the ground. Fortunately, it lands on its wheels, and everyone survives with only a few injuries. There is a train station nearby, so after ensuring it is empty, they decide to rest there. Cassius pulls out the map and discovers it will take 2 days to reach the colony. Thus, they will leave at dawn. Abigail counts the ammunition and notices there isn't much left. Megan and Cases share a little food, and Cases admits that Abigail reminds him of his wife. He reveals he had to kill his infected family and that afterwards she took her own life because she couldn't bear it. Cassius also tells the story of a boy from his hometown who was bitten. Since the wound did not hit a major artery, it took a few days for him to fully transform. Meanwhile, David finds a private place to check his ankle and reveals it is not twisted. The wound is actually a bite, and David knows he should isolate himself. The next day, the group continues walking under the scorching sun. David feels quite ill, and Cassius notices blood on his leg. He waits until the women are far ahead to press David against a tree and examine his ankle to confirm the suspicion. Cassius gives him the option to tell everyone on his own, but if he does not do it soon, he will shoot him at night. The group finds a house with lights on, and as they approach, a voice asks what they want. Cassius thinks it is too dangerous, but Abigail steps forward and explains they need help, swearing they mean no harm and mentioning the pregnant woman. Norton opens the door and points a gun at them, asking them to leave all weapons in the trunk outside. Then he invites them in with very sweet and welcoming behavior. Cassius notes the house has electricity, and Norton explains he is an engineer and built devices that provide electricity and hot water. He also mentions a wife, but ignores Megan when she asks where she is. Norton shares his bread and vegetables with them, and Abigail is happy to take a shower. Cassius finally manages to connect his laptop and see old photos that reveal his wife was pregnant before the pandemic. When he goes to see Megan, she admits she is scared because she hasn't felt the baby move since they arrived at the house. She makes him promise that if something happens to her, he will protect her child. Later, Norton shares a drink with everyone and explains that he has lived there for 20 years, but his wife is no longer around. He heard of the colony on the radio but has no interest in joining them because he prefers solitude. Then Norton begins to rant about people who are too obsessed with returning to old customs and about how humanity deserved the pandemic because it destroyed the planet and its ethics. He even compares the virus to evolution, saying only the strong survived. Cassius notices a strange knife on the table, but Norton takes it away from him. Feeling increasingly ill, David runs to the bathroom and notices the infection is spreading. When he comes out, he finds his friends unconscious because Norton, now wearing a lab coat and holding a strange machine, added something to the drinks. He can tell David is infected and activates the machine, which produces a sound that makes David collapse in pain. Norton explains that the device is like a dog whistle that only works on the infected. Before David passes out, the horde finds the train station and continues its hunt. Moments later, David wakes up and finds the whole group tied up in a basement. Norton is there taking notes for his experiment and reveals he has his infected wife locked in a cage. He releases her and controls her with his device to make her attack the group. Cassius and Abigail kick at her several times to contain her, causing the woman to go after David, who manages to break his bonds in a counterattack. They only fight for a few seconds before David subdues her, and Norton has to use his machine to prevent him from rescuing the others. However, David is still not fully transformed. Then he overcomes the pain and breaks the remaining ropes. Cassius finds a gun and tries to shoot Norton, who flees immediately. The group runs up the stairs and shuts the door behind them, at which point Norton begins to batter it with an axe. Abigail steals Norton's car keys, and Cassius recovers his belongings before checking on David. He wants to shoot him now, but the women convince him to wait. On the way to the car, Megan discovers her power supply is broken. Norton comes out to watch the group leave while his wife growls at him. When the car reaches the forest, the horde finally catches up and pursues them. The group sees lights in the distance, meaning they have found the colony. They try to drive as fast as possible, but unfortunately the road is blocked by a tree and they must continue on foot. The horde is closing in and they open fire, but David runs out of ammo. Since he is going to turn anyway, he tells the others to go while he buys time. The couple share an emotional farewell, and before the trio leaves, Cassius gives David his spare bullet. Once they are far enough, David lights his cigarette and begins to fight the ferals hand to hand, managing to take down some of them. However, the big feral surprises him from behind and breaks his neck. The rest of the ferals pursue the other survivors, so Abigail has to open fire to protect Cassius while escorting Megan. She also begins to scream for help, which catches the attention of the guards at the colony gate. They quickly shoot all the ferals pursuing the trio. When the remaining horde sees the bodies and the lights, they immediately retreat back into the forest. Afterwards, the group manage to get into the colony, and Megan is taken to the infirmary, where a midwife cares for her. The next morning, after meeting the colony leader, Cassius tells Abigail they should leave soon because humans cannot be trusted. However, Abigail is tired of running and ignores him. Then Cassius talks with the midwife, who tells him the baby is fine, but the mother only has a few hours to live. Cassius visits his friend and finds out the baby is a girl named Hope. Megan reminds him of the promise and gives him the family locket before dying. Meanwhile, Norton reaches the forest and finds all the bodies, and he also spots the colony. At that moment, the Horde tries to attack him, but he immediately controls them with his device and announces it is time for revenge at the colony. Cassius is taking care of Hope and wonders what to do next. Abigail has fun with the local teenagers and attends a small party at night. Alcohol flows and 2 guards fall asleep, so some teenagers see the opportunity to enter a tunnel. Abigail follows them and discovers a strange remote control, but when she touches it, Roderick stops her. He explains the entire fishing village is mined, and the remote will trigger an explosion if the ferals manage to invade it. Humans can protect themselves from this blast using a hatch in the ground that will take them to an abandoned dam. The next morning, Norton sees a guard in a boat and asks for help. After getting rid of him, a feral jumps into the water and climbs into the colony to kill the other guard as well. Now Norton can send the whole horde to attack while survivors are slaughtered everywhere. Some armed individuals go out to fight, and Abigail saves Roderick from a feral before assigning tasks to the group of teenagers. Those with guns must find a high position to shoot from, and Roderick must guide the survivors to the dam while she looks for Cassius. As panic takes the colony, the midwife takes Hope away from Cassius so he can go look for Abigail. The armed begin to run out of ammo, and the colony leader tries to flee, but a feral kills him immediately. Then Abigail and Cassius finally reunite and begin to fight the ferals together using a combination of firearms and hand-to-hand combat. When they see an opening, they try to join the evacuation, but Cassius is distracted when he sees Norton, and a feral knocks him over. Cassius manages to stab the creature, but Norton finds him and begins to kick him while talking about making the world safer. After a while, Cassius gets up and pushes Norton against the wall, repeatedly punching the device until it breaks. Then Cassius runs back to Abigail as the wildlings leap at Norton to kill him. The survivors finish crossing the tunnel and reach the dam, then ask Roderick to detonate the explosives, but he hesitates because Abigail has not yet left the colony. A large feral attempts to attack Abigail, so Cassius hits it with a boat oar. When the creature falls, Abigail notices its bracelet and is horrified to realize it belonged to her father. The shock paralyzes her, and Cassius has to pull her out of that state and drag her to the hatch. The pair enter the tunnel just before Roderick tires of waiting and detonates the place, killing all the ferals in the colony. Afterwards, the survivors discover among them an infected man. While Cassius tries to calm him down, a feral suddenly leaps and kills the man, then turns to attack Cassius, triggering a fight. They beat each other continuously until they fall to the ground where the creature almost bites Cassius. This time, Abigail is patient and waits for the right moment to shoot. The survivors watch as the colony burns and wonder what to do next. Abigail tells them they can build a new home at the dam, and Cassius reveals he stole Norton's notebook containing instructions to build a generator.